Buying a home is going to be one of the biggest things that you do in your life, and it isn't even taught in school. So, because of this, sometimes if you're unaware of the things that go on with buying a home, it can make the process harder, it can make the process longer, or it can make it so you're just flat out unable to buy a home. That's why in this video, I'm going to go over three things where if you just pay attention to it and, try and just give it your best efforts to actually follow, buying a home in the future, it's going to be easy. And it's also going to be something that just improves your overall life. If topics like this interest you, feel free to subscribe for the next one. But without further ado, we're going to hop right into the first one. So, the first big thing that you want to do is make sure you're giving your credit and your debt to income ratios the proper attention. The credit score, I think, is a really big one. I have lots of clients that I've seen come that really have no idea what their score is. It's not something they pay attention to. You can have Credit Karma or Experian, things like that, to kind of give you a rough idea. But if you're really not paying attention to it, you don't know where your score is, and that could definitely impact you down the line. Let's say for a conventional loan, right? You need a 620 median FICO score. So what does that mean? So we're going to take all of your scores. Let's say you have a 610, a 620, and a 630, and we're going to be using that 620. But if your median score is, let's say, lower than a 620, conventional loans require that you have to have that. So that could potentially take you out of being positioned to buy a home, and it could send you back to the drawing board. But like I said, if it's something that you're taking care of, you're paying close attention to, ideally, that's not going to be you. And while I say that it's important to watch your credit, watch the score, big things you can do for it, right? Keeping your debt utilization below 30%. That's always a key one. I talk to many credit repair professionals, and that's something that they're all kind of agreeing on for whatever account that you have, and really just across the board, even if you just look at it as a, combining it all. Under 30% is going to put you in a good position for your score. Another big thing is you want to be paying these things off. And another thing too, another big key thing is these collection accounts and charge-offs you definitely want to be aware of. I have had plenty of people say, "Oh, this is something that's supposed to come off," or things like that. If you are in a position where you're taking out a personal loan or something like that, I understand not everyone's life is the same. Everyone's situation is different. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But at the same time, if you want to think further ahead down the road, if you're thinking about buying a car in the future, if you're thinking about getting a home or even more lines of credit or anything like that down the line, it's so important that you actually pay those things off and don't just get the money, forget about it, and just never come back to it. Even if it's something that you have to work over time and set up a payment plan if you aren't making the already scheduled payments for it, because these things do tend to follow people around, is what I've seen. They can be tricky to get rid of too sometimes, just because I hear people say, "Oh, after X amount of years this is supposed to fall off." Well, the creditor can just sell it to a different company, and then boom, you've got a fresh on your report. And ideally, best case scenario is just a collection account. What if they report it as current and they're still reporting late every single month? That's going to hurt your score. That's definitely going to hurt you in terms of buying a house. Aside from these personal loans and things like that, I think debt to income, like I said, is a key thing to look out for, and really as best as you can. This isn't something I'm expecting clients to be paying close, minute attention to, going over every little detail for, but it's definitely something important, right? For student loans, for example, right? A lot of people, if you have your student loans deferred, they think, "Hey, I'm not paying any payments on this, so I shouldn't have to worry about this." But with student loans, like for FHA, for example, we had to take 0.5% of whatever the total amount of the student loans is, whether if you're not paying anything. So even if it's deferment, that's still something that's going to be counted against you. And especially if you're doing something like Klarna or Afterpay, something like that, that might not go into your credit report, but that's going to be something on the bank statement that you're making monthly obligations to. You definitely want to be on the lookout for those as well. Oftentimes, underwriters, they're looking through the bank statements, so they're looking for things like that anyways. So if they see something like, "Hey, this is a Klarna," let's say it's $100 coming out every single month, they're going to want to see "Hey, is this something you're currently working on paying off?" And if it's something that it is, then they're going to add $100 on your debt to income ratio. And if you're somewhere let's say you're a little bit tight, so FHA, for example, your debt to income ratio, which is your gross monthly income um, divided by the amount of debts and stuff that you have, um, can only be as high as 56%. So with it being highest at 56%, then we could run into a situation where, let's say it's really tight, property taxes were a little bit higher than expected, insurance was a bit higher than expected, or we're kind of right there. $100 of that pushes you over, and we're not in a situation where we can get rid of that. Some programs don't let you pay it off at closing. It's got to be something like it's got to be counted. That could push you over the barrier, and then all of a sudden you're not closing. So you definitely want to be on the lookout for things like that. Those type of things as well. It's like goes without saying. And if you kind of got it from my last example, that can also lower your buying power ahead of time, right? If your lender is already aware of these things and accounting for all of it, you might qualify for less compared to if you had these things paid off and taken care of, and then you could qualify higher. So this could also not just impact your score, but it also can impact your loan size, how big of a house you can get, things like that. So definitely important, worth taking note of. And then again, like I said, I think that having good credit, making sure your credit profile is taken care of and you're watching it, is not just going to make buying a home easier for you. I think it's going to make your life easier. Getting a car is going to be easier. If you need a higher credit card limit for whatever reason in the future, that's going to make that easier. Not saying that you should be taking out a whole bunch of cards, but things like that, it's easier to do when you already have established good credit. You never know if there's going to be a rainy day or something like that, and you need to pull some emergency funds or anything like that, and then you'll be glad that you have the credit. A great resource that you can use to look at your credit report as well is annualcreditreport.com. It is a soft pull, so it's not going to go on as a hard inquiry on your score. And soft pulls are pretty accurate in comparison to a hard pull. So it's going to let you know, hey, these are the things I got going on with my credit. So maybe, hey, you need to talk to a credit repair consultant or something like that to get things fixed before you buy a home. And it also just helps you be aware of the things going on with your report, because like I said, like whether you're going to be buying a home, you're going to be buying a car, or whatever in the future, having your credit taken care of and managed is definitely going to make things a lot easier down the line. So the next big thing following off of that is that it's important to have a savings put together. I think for people buying a home that this is huge and definitely worth considering. There's, don't get me wrong, plenty of down payment assistance options out there, right? You can get the down payment cover. We can get seller concessions for the back end closing costs. But still, I think that it's important to have some sort of savings tucked away. Now, understand that there's down payment assistance options. We can get the down payment cover. We can get seller concessions on the back end. But this isn't like a flat case for everybody, right? This isn't what's every single person is going to go through. I've even had clients who have gotten money back at closing. I still think it's worth it to have a savings. In terms of how much savings, of course, I think as much as possible is always the best case scenario. I think that if you're around even like $5,000 with certain programs or concessions, you could put yourself in a really good position to really not have to come to closing with that or even less, But I do think having a savings gives you flexibility, right? Because what happens if, hey, maybe we need 6% concessions or whatever to make this deal work on top of getting down payment covered. Well, what if you find the dream home that you like and they're only willing to give you 5% concessions or 4%, right? Something that could be just a difference of a couple thousand, right? At that point, the savings, you're glad you have it. In addition to that, once you're going into the house and you're buying it, everything falls on you, right? So we're no longer renting. So if something goes wrong, there isn't a landlord or a leasing company that you can call or maintenance that you can call to come in and take care of things, right? It's all on you. So, going in, I also think it's important to go in with savings, just because even if we don't use the money, if a rainy day happens or you got to get furniture or something happens while you're in the moving process, you're going to want to have that money. You don't want to just be in the home and have that be it. You want to be able to protect yourself, and you don't want to be put in a position where if something happens like immediately or even further down the line, that you don't want to completely derail your finances. So I think that saving is definitely important. I think too that a big thing that goes on with saving is kind of budgeting. So if you're using an app like YNAB or Mint or something like that, I think those are major. Being able to track your finances, knowing where every single dollar is going, that's probably a topic for another video. But being aware of those type of things makes it a lot easier to build the savings, because you already know where everything's going. So you can see, hey, maybe I need to cut back on this, cut back on that. in order to hit your goals. And at the same time, like I always say, I know not everyone's situation is the same. I know everyone's got different things going on, but at the same time, I do think it's important to have some. And granted, not everyone's situation allows that for it, right? Like you might be in a situation where you got to move out in less than a month. You just got to make something shake, and we're able to make that work. We're able to make that work. But if that's something where you're thinking, hey, I think I want to be buying, 6 months, a year down the line, then this is definitely something to think about, something to start getting in order. Now, the third thing is also big, and that is keeping your employment and job history consistent. So, if you've done the past two things, right? You're paying attention to your credit, use annualcreditreport.com. You've built up your savings, so whether we're using down payment systems or not, you're in a good position to make something happen. Then you're going to be in a prime position to be able to buy a home. Now, keeping your employment and job history consistent is that last key piece that sometimes people mess up or don't really know about, right? So the way underwriters look at it is a lot of times I hear, oh, I've got to be working in the same job for 2 years, and that's not true. The 2 years history is more so of the same type, right? So if you're a full-time W-2 employee, right, like the majority of people, then we're going to want to see, hey, full-time, 40 hours. We want to see this on the pay stubs, and then we're going to want to see this on the W-2s. So we want 2 years of that. What we don't want is a year full-time W-2 and then you switching to something else, working 1099 or anything like that, because that restarts at 2 years. Same thing like if we're working a part-time job, right? Like if we're working full-time, we switch to part-time, then boom, we need 2 years of that part-time. If we're working two part-time jobs, right, we need 2 years of that. So 2 years of whatever you're doing just has to be consistent, and the type, right? Like the tax situation ideally needs to be the same. There's certain exceptions, but a topic for a different video. But you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have that in order, because I have people, they come in, maybe they're working full-time something before, but then now they switch to part-time. Well, it's like I can't really use this income, not because I don't want to, but just because of what the guidelines go off of. And another big thing on like, hey, let's say you're full-time working W-2, stuff like that, and you're working hourly. I've seen, as of this video, the future might be different, who knows, but probably not. Underwriters are sticklers about the rules. They're sticklers about income specifically as well. So if you don't want to ever give them a reason to doubt your income. So it's important to keep those hours up, keep them consistent, because the last thing you want to have when you're turning in something to underwriting, your lender's turning it in, is a whole bunch of pay stubs saying 32 hours, 36 hours, 38 hours, 40 hours, because then that could bump you into variable income, so then we're not even talking full-time anymore. We need 2 years of that. And then, the averages, it can just spiral out of control. So best thing to protect yourself, if you're full-time, make sure you're not clocking out early. Make sure you're also, not doing anything crazy to really jeopardize anything. I also think it's important to consider that unless it's absolutely necessary, like I said, like everyone's situation is different, but it's probably not the best idea if you're looking to switch another job and buy a home at the same time. Depending on the situation, probably not the best time to switch the job and take a pay cut or anything, right? Because that's going to immediately lower your buying power. And then if you're going to switch the job and then try not to tell your lender, we're going to go on underwriting in the future, we're going to find out anyways, and then you're not going to get the house because your buying power is lowered. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for that as well. And that's a real thing. I've had clients switch jobs while we're under contract, and then once we find out, we adjust everything, and then they no longer qualify, and then we don't get closing, they don't get the house, and then ideally they haven't told their landlord or anything like that they're moving out or anything like that, so they don't have to worry about changing where they live. So in conclusion, if you're able to do these three things, right? If we're able to keep our credit in check, if we're able to have savings and stuff put together, if we're able to keep our job history and things like that consistent, and you're doing your best on all of those fronts, right? Then we should have good credit, we should have good savings, we should have good job history. Buying a home, getting approved for a home, it's going to be a breeze for you. Like you're going to make it potentially one of the unnecessarily hard things that you do in your life to something so easy that you're like, wow, this was great, because like I said, buying a home is going to be one of the biggest things that you do in your life. So why not just make it as easy as possible on yourself? And while I say that too, I also think it's important to know that none of these things I talked about in this video are particularly exciting, right? It's not some big adrenaline rush checking your credit or anything like that, or building up a savings. These things are boring, but at the same time, you can call them delayed gratification, because what it's going to lead to is, like I said, not even just you buying a home and that being a great thing for you. Like I said, having all those things in order will make buying a home so much easier. But if in the future, if you're going to get a car, that's going to be easier for you. If you need really anything, um, it's going to be easier on you, because a lot of things are more put together, I would say, for you, financial profile wise. So that's something as well to consider. While you think of like, oh, I don't want to do this, or I've been saving for a couple of months, like I'm just sick of it or anything like that. Definitely keep going. Um, these are things that aren't immediate benefits, but like I said, they're just going to add so much to your life that it's worth doing, I promise you. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're interested in more things like this, more tips, more perspective on things, then make sure you subscribe and turn the notifications on, so that way you'll know about the next one.